We're on chapter 16, page 179, called Lost in the Cave. So remember, they went on a picnic for Becky Thatcher just wanted to have a party. And so they went on a picnic and they decided to explore the cave. And yeah, okay, that's it. All the while that Huck was following Injun Joe and his partner to the widow Douglas's house, Tom and Becky were still on the other side of the shore exploring the cave. Neither knew that the picnic party had long since departed. That's right. So the ferry boat came and everybody knew, okay, we need to leave, but apparently Becky and Tom didn't hear the ferry boat. Uh-oh. All right, so the party, everybody had already left. And in the excitement of boarding the boat, no one in the laughing, shouting crowd of young people had noticed that Tom and Becky were not with them. So nobody noticed that they weren't there. Without realizing it, Tom and Becky had lost their way. Uh-oh. They had started through a long corridor in the cave, and at each new opening, they glanced to see if it looked familiar, but every time the path was strange to Tom. His confidence began to fail him, and soon he began turning off into new openings at random. Becky began to cry. So Tom probably knew some of the cave, but it said that he didn't know a lot of the cave. So he got lost as he and Becky were exploring. So Becky starts to cry. "We're lost, Tom. We'll never get out of here. The others have left and we'll surely die here before anyone finds us." Tom tried to cheer her up, tried to make her happy. He assured her that they would find a way out. But after several hours, oh no, hunger and fatigue set in. Fatigue is when you're really tired and you can't walk, you can't go anymore, you're just too tired. They ate their last piece of cake, and Becky's legs refused to carry her another inch. So she and Tom sat down and rested. In the light of their last candle, they talked of home, its comfortable beds, and all their friends. When the candle finally flickered and went out, Becky cried, and Tom frowned in silence. He was frightened too. Can you imagine being lost in a cave and having no light? Caves are dark. They're like pitch black. Can you imagine? That would be so scary. Time passed. Tom and Becky fell asleep and woke up several times. They had no way of knowing how many hours or even days were passing. Only the gnawing hunger in their stomachs reminded them that time was slowly going by. So they didn't know how long they had been in the cave because there was no light. There was no sun or anything to let them know. "Tom, do you think they'll miss us and come and hunt for us?" Becky asked hopefully. "Yes, they will. They certainly will," Tom reassured her. Tom and Becky both realized how worried and anxious their family and friends must be. Their conversation drifted off, and they became silent and thoughtful. The hours passed, and hunger began to torment them again. They were getting too weak to even move when Tom suddenly gasped, "Shh! Did you hear that?" They both held their breaths and listened. There was a sound like a faint, far-off shout. Tom jumped up and quickly answered it. Then he helped Becky to her feet. Leading her by the hand, he started groping down the corridor in the direction of the shouts. Every few minutes they stopped and listened again. Each time the sound seemed to be getting closer and closer, so they're hearing somebody shout. Okay? So talk really loud. "It's them!" shouted Tom. "They've come for us. Becky, we're all right now." The joy of the prisoners was almost overwhelming. Their speed was slow, however, because large, deep pits were common in the cave, and they had to walk carefully. So a deep pit, so it's like in this picture, it suddenly, the floor would go down and you could fall and really hurt yourself. So they had to be really careful. So they were walking really slow because they couldn't see anything because it's dark. And then they're probably feeling with their feet like, oh, does this go down? Are we being safe? Are we going to be okay? So they're not moving very fast. They shortly came to one pit and had to stop. It might be 3 feet deep, it might be 100. So it could be only 3 feet or so many feet that they could, honestly, they could die if they fell in it. They could not pass it. Tom got down on his stomach and reached down as far as he could. No bottom. They would have to stay there and wait until the searchers came. They listened for the shouts again, but the voices were becoming more and more distant, so far away they couldn't hear them as much. After a little while, they disappeared altogether. So they were gone, the shouts, they couldn't hear the talking anymore. Tom and Becky were miserable. Tom shouted until he was hoarse. So like when you talk a lot or you shout a lot and your voice starts to it doesn't sound normal anymore and your throat hurts, that's what hoarse is. Tom shouted until he was hoarse, but it was no use. Still, he talked hopefully to Becky as they groped their way to a spring of fresh water they had passed earlier. They lay down to rest there, and the weary time dragged on. When Tom awoke and could think clearly, he realized that there were some side passages along the corridors. It would be better to explore some of them than to sit and do nothing. So, we have like a corridor, okay? And he realized that there are side passages. So, it breaks off and there's a way over here. There's a way over here. So it's on the side. Can you see that? Sorry. So it's on the side and they're called side passages. Okay? So he realized it would be better to go down those side passages than just sit and do nothing. Okay? So he took a ball of kite string from his pocket, tied it to a rock jutting out from the cave wall, and he and Becky started off. Tom led the way. So he put the string around a rock where they were sitting, and what he's going to do is he's going to go down the side passages, and if they don't lead anywhere, he can follow the string back to the rock where they were. Okay, so it's so they don't keep getting lost, because that would be bad. Tom led the way, unwinding the line as he groped along. At the end of 20 steps, the corridor ended in a ledge, so it just dropped off. There was no way to go any farther. Tom got down on his knees and felt below, and then as far around the corner as he could reach. The moment his head turned the corner, his heart filled with joy. For not 20 yards away, he saw a human hand holding a candle. Oh, so he saw someone. Tom stood up and began to shout. Instantly, that hand was followed by a body from behind a rock. Tom was paralyzed with fear. He couldn't move when he recognized Injun Joe. So Injun Joe's in the cave with them, you guys. Oh my gosh. But before Tom could grab Becky and run, Injun Joe fled into the darkness. He probably had not recognized Tom's voice because of the echoes in the cave. Still, Tom's fright weakened every muscle in his body. He told himself that if he had the strength enough to get back to the spring, so where the water was, he would stay there. Nothing would tempt him to risk meeting Injun Joe again. He did not want to alarm Becky by telling her what he had seen, so he explained that he had only shouted for luck. So he didn't tell Becky that he saw Injun Joe or anybody. He was just like, oh no, I was just shouting to see if anybody would be there. He was scared, guys. I would be scared. But hunger led Tom to try again. After a long sleep, he awoke, ready to explore the cave once more. Becky was very weak. She had sunk into a half-conscious state and would not be roused to go with him. So she wouldn't go with him. She was half-conscious, so she was just like barely awake, and she just couldn't do anymore. She mumbled that she would wait where she was and die. It would not be long. Oh, poor girl. She told Tom to go with the kite string and explore if he wanted to, but she asked only that he return to stay by her and hold her hand until it was all over. Tom choked back a sob and kissed her. He made a show of being confident of finding the searchers or an escape from the cave, but he was distressed with hunger and fear. Taking the kite string in his hand, he went groping down on one of the passages on his hands and knees. Oh, isn't that so hard, you guys? Can you imagine these children being lost in a cave? Can you imagine being like 10 or 12, 13, and being lost in a cave, and you don't know how long you've been there? You're so hungry, you're starving, and you don't know how to get out. Plus, there's a murderer in the cave with you, and he could find you and kill you because you're the one who said, oh yeah, he's the one that murdered Dr. Robinson. It wasn't Muff Potter. Holy cow. This is scary, guys. Now, remember, I don't know if you guys remember this from the beginning, but I told you, this is written by Mark Twain. And this is based off of stories that happened in his childhood. So, you guys, this really happened to him or at least one of his friends. Holy cow, isn't that crazy? Oh my goodness. Okay, so think about things that you can write about Tom. We learn a lot about Tom. He doesn't give up. He's really trying to get him and Becky out of the cave. Okay, that shows a lot about Tom's character. And you can find evidence to back that up. And also how he knew that he needed to like stay happy for Becky. And also when he saw Injun Joe, he's like, nope, I'm not going to tell Becky. I'm not going to make her worry. So he's very considerate of what other people might be feeling. And so, yeah, those are just some of my thoughts. All right, guys, we'll see what happens.